A 9-year-old janitor's daughter stuns everyone by saving a 500 meters deal with her flawless Mandarin. With no translator, the CEO panics until the little girl takes control and changes everything. Before the story begins, wherever life has placed you today, this message is for you. The 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower buzzed with nervous energy as Margaret Chen wheeled her cleaning cart past the massive glass doors of the executive boardroom. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening in October, and the building should have been emptying out, but tonight was different. Tonight, the biggest deal in Hartwell Industries' 70-year history was about to unfold. Margaret's 9-year-old daughter, Lily, sat quietly in the corner of the hallway, her small legs dangling from an oversized leather chair. She clutched a worn Mandarin textbook in her lap, the pages dog-eared from countless hours of study. This had been their routine for 3 years now, ever since Margaret's husband David had left them, forcing her to take evening shifts to make ends meet. "Mama, why are all these people here so late?" Lily whispered in perfect English, though her voice carried the slight musical cadence that came from growing up bilingual. Margaret glanced toward the boardroom, where men in expensive suits paced frantically, their voices rising with each passing minute. "Big business meeting, sweetheart. Very important people from China are coming tonight." Lily's dark eyes lit up with curiosity. She had been teaching herself Mandarin for 4 years, ever since she'd found an old language learning program on her mum's phone. What started as a way to pass time during long cleaning shifts had become an obsession. Inside the boardroom, CEO Jonathan Hartwell loosened his tie for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The 62-year-old executive had built his company from a small family business into a manufacturing empire. But this deal with Zhang Industries would either cement his legacy or destroy everything he'd worked for. $500 million, the largest contract in company history. Where the hell is Rodriguez? Hartwell barked at his assistant Patricia Wu, who was frantically dialing numbers on her phone. "Still no answer, sir. His phone goes straight to voicemail. The translation service says they have no backup available on such short notice." Hartwell's face flushed red. Miguel Rodriguez was the best Mandarin translator in the city, and without him, they couldn't communicate with the Zhang Industries delegation, arriving in 13 minutes. "Sir, perhaps we could reschedule," suggested Patricia, but Hartwell's glare could have melted steel. "Reschedule? Zhang Wei flies back to Beijing tomorrow morning. This is our only shot." He slammed his fist on the mahogany table. 40 years I've been building toward this moment, and some translator's going to ruin it all." Outside, Lily watched the chaos unfold through the glass doors. She could read the panic in their body language, could see the way Mr. Hartwell kept checking his watch. Her young mind pieced together the situation with startling clarity. "Mama?" "Ah," she said quietly, "they need someone who speaks Chinese, don't they?" Margaret looked up from wiping down the water cooler. "What did you say, baby?" "The men in the suits, they're worried because they can't talk to the Chinese people who are coming." Before Margaret could respond, the elevator dinged, and 5 impeccably dressed Chinese executives stepped onto the floor. Leading them was Zhang Wei, a distinguished man in his 50s whose presence commanded immediate attention. The Chinese delegation approached the boardroom, and through the glass, Lily could see the panic in Hartwell's eyes intensify. The executives were speaking rapidly in Mandarin, their voices carrying concern about the delay. "Mr. Zhang is asking why no one is greeting them properly," Lily whispered to her mother. "He's starting to think this company doesn't respect them." Margaret's hands trembled. "Lily, you can't really understand all that, can you?" "Mama? I've been studying Chinese for 4 years. I know I'm just a kid, but I can help them." Lily's voice carried a determination that seemed far beyond her 9 years. "That man is about to leave. He's telling the others that Americans don't honor their commitments. The delegation was indeed turning toward the elevator, Jiang Wei's expression darkening with each passing second. In the boardroom, Hartwell looked like a man watching his dreams crumble. Lily stood up, her small frame barely visible against the towering glass and steel around her. "Mama, I have to try." "Lily, no. These are very important people. You're just a child." But Lily was already walking toward the boardroom doors, her heart pounding with the weight of what she was about to do. As she reached for the door handle, Jiang Wei's voice carried clearly through the glass. "This is exactly the kind of disrespect that destroys business relationships. We're leaving." Lily pushed open the door and stepped into the room that would change her life forever. The boardroom fell silent as every eye turned to the small girl who had just walked into the most important business meeting in Hartwell Industries' history. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to bow respectfully in the traditional Chinese manner. "Zhang Xiansheng, Qingbie Zhu, women Gongxi Feichang, Zongjing Nin." "Mr. Zhang, please don't leave. Our company deeply respects you." The words flowed from her lips with perfect pronunciation, each tone precisely placed. Jiang Wei froze mid-step, his eyebrows rising in astonishment. The other Chinese executives exchanged glances of surprise and curiosity. Hartwell's mouth fell open. "What in the hell?" "Sir," Patricia whispered urgently, "I think she's speaking Chinese." Jiang Wei turned fully toward Lily, his stern expression softening with intrigue. "Xiao Peng Yu, Nishi Shui? Ni Zhenmei Hui Shuo Zhongwen? Little friend, who are you? How do you know Chinese?" Lily's confidence grew with each word. "Wo Jiao Lily, wo Mama Zai Zeli Dagong, wo Shuexi Zhongwen Yijing Xinian Le, Yinwei wo Shang Lijiani Mende Venhua." "My name is Lily. My mother works here. I've been studying Chinese for 4 years because I want to understand your culture." The transformation in Jiang Wei's demeanor was immediate and remarkable. His shoulders relaxed, and a genuine smile crossed his face. "Ni de Zhongwen, shuo de hen hao, ni kai ju sui ma." "Your Chinese is very good. You're only 9 years old." "Shide. Then shi wohen shi huan zuexi yuyan. Wajidao ni men jinwan lai shi, wele tampan yige hen zhong yao de hetong." "Yes, but I love learning languages. I know you came tonight to negotiate a very important contract." Hartwell found his voice. I don't understand what's happening here." Lily turned to him, switching seamlessly to English. "Mr." Hartwell, Mr. Zhang was leaving because he felt disrespected by the delay. He believes punctuality shows honor. "I told him you deeply respect his time and his company." Jiang Wei spoke rapidly in Mandarin, his tone warming considerably. Lily listened intently, nodding as she processed his words. "Mr. Zhang says he's impressed by your company's commitment to cultural understanding. He didn't expect to find someone so young who could bridge our worlds." Lily paused, her young face serious. "He wants to know if you're truly ready to build a partnership based on mutual respect and long-term commitment." Hartwell's mind raced. This 9-year-old child had somehow salvaged his dying deal in a matter of minutes. Tell him that respect and commitment are the foundation of everything we do at Hartwell Industries." As Lily translated, her voice carried nuances that went beyond mere words. She understood the cultural context, the subtle meanings behind Jiang Wei's questions. "Mr. Zhang is asking about the specific terms of the manufacturing contract," Lily continued. "He wants to know about quality control measures and delivery schedules." For the next hour, Lily became the bridge between two worlds. She translated technical specifications, financial terms, and cultural expectations with remarkable precision. But more than that, she helped each side understand the other's true intentions. "Mr. Zhang," Lily said during a brief pause, "may I share something my mother taught me?" When he nodded, she continued in Mandarin. Womama sure, zhenzheng de chenggong lai zi xiang hu zunzhong he li jie. And mother says true success comes from mutual respect and understanding. Zhang Wei's eyes misted slightly. Ni shi yi ge hen tebia de xiao nuer, niba women du tuan jie zai yi ki le. You are a very special little girl. You've brought us all together. As the meeting concluded with both sides agreeing to move forward, Zhang Wei knelt down to Lily's level. Xiao Lily, ni jintian ge woman shang le yi tang hen zhongyo deke. Little Lily, you taught us all a very important lesson today. Hartwell watched in amazement as his biggest business rival showed genuine affection for a janitor's daughter. Lily, he said quietly, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Mr. Hartwell. I just wanted to help. But as the Chinese delegation prepared to leave, Zhang Wei whispered something to Lily that made her eyes widen. She glanced at her mother, who had been watching from the doorway, then back at the businessman. What did he say? Hartwell asked. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. He said this is just the beginning, that sometimes the smallest person can change the biggest things. As the delegation left, Zhang Wei pressed his business card into Lily's small hand. On the back, written in elegant Chinese characters, was a message that would haunt her dreams for weeks to come. What Lily didn't know was that this night had set in motion events that would transform not just her life, but the lives of everyone she loved. 3 weeks later, Lily sat in the school cafeteria, her Mandarin textbook hidden beneath her lunch tray. The other fourth graders chatted about cartoons and video games. But Lily's mind was consumed with the business card Zhang Wei had given her. She had memorized every character of his message. Great journeys begin with small steps. Lily Chen, what are you reading now? Asked Mrs. Patterson, her teacher, sliding into the seat beside her. Just some Chinese writing, Lily replied, quickly closing the book. She had learned to downplay her abilities after several classmates had teased her about being a show-off. Chinese? That's quite advanced for someone your age. Mrs. Patterson's eyes narrowed with concern. Lily, is everything okay at home? You seem different lately. The truth was, everything had changed since that night in the boardroom. Hartwell had given her mother a substantial bonus and a promotion to head of building maintenance. They had moved from their cramped studio apartment to a real 2-bedroom place in Queens. But with the improvements came new pressures Lily didn't fully understand. I'm fine, Mrs. Patterson, Lily said, but her voice lacked conviction. That evening, as Margaret finished her new administrative duties in the building's management office, she found Lily waiting in the lobby with her homework spread across a marble table. The sight still amazed her. Her daughter studying in the same building where executives made million-dollar decisions. How was school, sweetheart? Margaret asked. Gathering her purse and coat, Mrs. Patterson asked about my Chinese studies again. She thinks something's wrong with me. Margaret's heart clenched. There's nothing wrong with you, Lily. You're gifted. But I don't feel gifted. I feel different. Like I don't belong anywhere. As they rode the subway home, Margaret watched her daughter's reflection in the window. Lily had always been mature for her age, but lately she seemed to carry burdens that no 9-year-old should bear. Mama, can I ask you something? Of course, baby. Do you think Daddy would be proud of me for helping those businessmen? Margaret's breath caught. David had left them when Lily was 6, claiming he couldn't handle the responsibility of a family. Your father didn't understand how special you are, but I know he would be proud. The lie felt heavy on her tongue, but she couldn't bring herself to tell her daughter the truth, that David had called Lily too weird before he walked out of their lives. Back at Hartwell Industries, Jonathan Hartwell sat in his office, reviewing the preliminary contracts from Zhang Industries. The deal was proceeding smoothly, but he couldn't shake the image of that 9-year-old girl who had saved his company. Patricia, he called to his assistant, set up a meeting with Mrs. Chen for tomorrow morning and find out everything you can about educational opportunities for gifted children in the city. Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why the sudden interest in the janitor's daughter? Hartwell leaned back in his chair. That little girl has a gift that could take her anywhere in the world, but she's stuck in a system that doesn't recognize her potential. He paused, his mind racing with possibilities. I've been thinking about our company's future, Patricia. We're expanding into international markets, and we need people who understand different cultures. She's 9 years old, sir. Today she's 9, but in 10 years, she could be leading our entire Asian division. Hartwell's eyes gleamed with the same intensity he had shown when building his empire. I want to invest in her future. Meanwhile, across the city, Jiang Wei was having a similar conversation with his own advisors. The Chinese businessman had been deeply impressed by Lily's cultural sensitivity and linguistic abilities. I want a full scholarship program established at the Beijing International Academy. Find the best Chinese language immersion programs in New York. This child has potential that goes far beyond her current circumstances. But as these powerful men made plans for Lily's future, none of them considered what the girl herself might want. In her small bedroom in Queens, Lily stared at the ceiling and wondered if her gift was a blessing or a curse. The next morning brought a surprise that would change everything. Margaret received a formal invitation to meet with both Hartwell and Jiang Wei, who had extended his stay in New York, specifically to discuss Lily's future. Your daughter has a rare gift that could bridge worlds. We would like to help her develop it properly. As Margaret read the invitation, she realized that their quiet life was about to be turned upside down once again. The business world had taken notice of her daughter, and there would be no going back to the simple existence they had known. The call came at 2:47 p.m. while Margaret was reviewing the morning's maintenance reports. The voice on the other end was hesitant, almost fearful. Mrs. Chen, this is Dr. Rachel Morrison from the Columbia University Linguistics Department. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Margaret's grip tightened on the phone. How can I help you, Doctor? Well, this is rather unusual, but I received a call from a colleague at Beijing University. Apparently, there's been quite a bit of discussion in academic circles about a young girl who served as a translator for a major business deal. The linguistic community is fascinated. Margaret's heart sank. What kind of discussion? The kind that could change your daughter's life forever. Mrs. Chen, would it be possible to arrange a meeting? I'd like to assess Lily's abilities formally. 3 hours later, Margaret sat in Dr. Morrison's office, a cramped space filled with books in dozens of languages. The professor was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who had spent her career studying how humans communicate. Mrs. Chen, I want to be completely honest with you. What your daughter accomplished in that boardroom is extraordinary. Self-taught Mandarin proficiency at age 9, with cultural awareness that most adults never achieve. It's unprecedented. Is that good or bad? Margaret asked, though she already knew the answer would complicate their lives. It's remarkable, but it also comes with responsibilities. Your daughter has a gift that could benefit thousands of people, but only if it's developed properly. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. There are programs, scholarships, opportunities that most parents only dream of, but they would require significant changes to your life. Margaret thought about Lily's recent struggles at school, her growing sense of isolation from other children. What kind of changes? Specialized education, cultural immersion programs, possibly even living abroad for periods of time. Dr. Morrison's voice grew serious. Mrs. Chen, your daughter could become one of the most important cultural ambassadors of her generation, but the path isn't easy. That evening, Margaret found Lily in her room, writing Chinese characters in a notebook. The sight had become routine, but now it carried new weight. "Lily, we need to talk about your future. Are you going to tell me I need to stop studying Chinese, like the kids at school say?" Margaret's heart broke. "No, sweetheart. Actually, some very important people want to help you study it even more." Over the next hour, Margaret explained about the opportunities that were being offered, advanced programs, cultural exchanges, educational paths that could lead anywhere in the world. But as she spoke, she watched her daughter's expression grow more troubled. "Mama, what if I don't want to be special? What if I just want to be normal?" "Oh, baby, you are normal. You're just gifted in a way that could help a lot of people." "But what about you? What about us?" Margaret pulled her daughter close. "Whatever we decide together. I promise you that." The next morning brought the formal meeting with Hartwell and Zhang Wei. Lily sat between her mother and Dr. Morrison in the executive conference room, feeling smaller than ever despite the momentous decisions being made around her. "Lily," Zhang Wei said gently in Mandarin, "you have a gift that could help people from different cultures understand each other. But the choice of how to use it must be yours." Hartwell nodded. "We're offering you opportunities, not obligations. Full scholarships, language immersion programs, cultural exchanges, but only if you want them." For the first time in weeks, Lily felt a spark of excitement. "Could I learn other languages too? Japanese, Korean?" "As many as you want," Dr. Morrison smiled. "You have a natural ability that comes along maybe once in a generation." But as the adults discussed logistics and timelines, Lily's mind wandered to something that had been bothering her for days. She had been researching Zhang Wei's company online, and something didn't add up. "Mr. Zhang," she said suddenly, interrupting the conversation, "can I ask you something in Chinese?" "Of course." "Nawan shang nisho de gongsi shang mu, yushe budui." That night, the company project you mentioned, something wasn't right. Zhang Wei's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Ni shi shen mei yisi?" "What do you mean?" The room fell silent. Hartwell looked between Zhang Wei and Lily, sensing tension he didn't understand. "Lily, what's wrong?" Margaret asked. I think, Mr. Zhang might not have been completely honest about his company." As Zhang Wei struggled to find an answer, Lily understood that her journey into the world of international business was about to take a much more dangerous turn than anyone had anticipated. The silence in the conference room stretched like a taut wire. Zhang Wei's carefully composed mask began to crack as Lily's dark eyes held his gaze with unsettling intensity. "Mr. Zhang," Lily said quietly in Mandarin, "Wo jidao ni bu shi Zhang Wei." "I know you're not Zhang Wei." Margaret gasped, though she couldn't understand the words. Hartwell's face flushed red with confusion and growing alarm. "Lily, what are you saying?" he demanded. "The real Zhang Wei died 3 years ago in a car accident in Beijing. I found the news article online last night." Lily's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "This man has been using his identity to conduct business in America." The man claiming to be Zhang Wei stood slowly, his demeanor shifting from warm benefactor to something far more dangerous. "You're a very clever little girl. Perhaps too clever for your own good." "Who are you?" Margaret whispered, instinctively moving closer to her daughter. "My name is Liu Chen. I've been building a network of legitimate businesses to cover some less legitimate activities." No, his English was suddenly flawless, without the accent he had been affecting. "Your daughter's linguistic abilities would have been very useful to my organization." Hartwell reached for his phone, but Liu was faster. "I wouldn't do that, Mr. Hartwell. You see, you've already signed preliminary contracts with my company. Backing out now would be complicated." "You're threatening us?" Margaret's voice rose with protective fury. "I'm explaining the situation. Your daughter discovered something she shouldn't have. Now we need to find a way to resolve this that benefits everyone." Lily's mind raced. She had spent 4 years not just learning Mandarin, but studying Chinese culture, history, and current events. She understood the implications of what Liu was saying better than the adults in the room. "You're involved in some kind of financial crime, aren't you?" she asked, "using fake business deals to move money illegally." Liu's smile was cold. "You really are remarkable. Most adults wouldn't have pieced that together." "What do you want?" Hartwell asked, his voice tight with fear. "Originally, I wanted to recruit young Lily here, train her, educate her, and eventually bring her into my organization." Liu's eyes never left Lily's face. "But now that she knows too much, we have a problem." Margaret stood up, pulling Lily behind her. "We're leaving, now." "I'm afraid that's not possible, Mrs. Chen. Your daughter has information that could destroy a very profitable operation." Lily felt the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. Her gift, the thing that had seemed like such a blessing, had led them all into danger. But as she looked at her mother's frightened face and Hartwell's pale complexion, she realized that her linguistic abilities weren't her only asset. "Mr. Liu," she said, switching back to Mandarin, "Ni jiang yao de shi shen mei? What do you want?" "Money is part of it, but what I really want is silence and cooperation." You said your associates replaced the security guards," she said slowly. "That's right. But you forgot about someone, didn't you?" Liu's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "The real security guards are still in the building. They're just not in uniform tonight." Lily's voice grew stronger. "Dr. Morrison isn't just a linguistics professor. She's also a consultant for the FBI's International Crime Division." Liu's face went ashen. "You're lying. Ask her yourself. She's been recording this entire conversation through the phone I left on her desk. The FBI is already on their way." Margaret stared at her daughter in amazement. "Lily, how did you—" "I researched everyone who wanted to help me, just like I researched Mr. Zhang's company." Lily's voice carried a confidence that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. "I knew something was wrong when Dr. Morrison asked too many questions about the business deal." Liu lunged toward the phone on the conference table. But it was too late. The sound of sirens was already echoing through the building's corridors. Within minutes, the conference room was filled with FBI agents. Dr. Morrison, now clearly in her element as a federal investigator, supervised as Liu and his associates were taken into custody. "Mrs. Chen," she said, "your daughter just helped us bust an international money laundering ring that we've been tracking for 2 years." As the chaos subsided, Lily found herself once again at the center of adult attention. But this time, it felt different. She had used her gift not just to help with business, but to protect the people she loved. "Lily," Hartwell said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me, Mr. Hartwell. I just wanted to keep my family safe." 6 months later, Lily sat in the back of a yellow taxi, watching the familiar streets of Queens blur past her window. Everything looked the same, but she knew that she had changed in ways that would never be visible to the casual observer. The FBI had kept their involvement in the Liu Chen case quiet, but word had spread through certain circles about the 9-year-old girl who had exposed an international criminal network. The legitimate Zhang Industries had indeed come through with their contract, and Hartwell Industries was now thriving. "Mama, are you sure about this?" Lily asked, as they pulled up to the impressive gates of the Manhattan Academy for Gifted Students. Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand. "We talked about this, sweetheart. It's just a trial period. If you don't like it, you can always go back to regular school." But they both knew that wasn't true. Lily had crossed a threshold that night in the boardroom, and there was no going back to the simple life they had known. The academy specialized in nurturing exceptional children. And Lily's combination of linguistic gifts and real-world experience made her exactly the kind of student they sought. Besides, Margaret added with a smile, Dr. Morrison says you'll be working with students from all over the world. You'll finally have friends who understand what it's like to be different. As they walked through the academy's halls, Lily marveled at the diversity around her. Students conversed in dozens of languages, worked on projects that seemed far beyond their years, and carried themselves with the confidence of young people who had found their place in the world. Miss Chen? A tall woman with silver hair and kind eyes approached them. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Foster, the Academy's director. We're so excited to have you join us. Thank you, Dr. Foster. I'm nervous but excited. That's perfectly normal. Let me show you to your first class, Advanced Cultural Communications. I think you'll find it very interesting. The classroom they entered was unlike any Lily had ever seen. Students sat in small groups, each discussing international current events in different languages. The teacher, a young man with an easy smile, greeted them warmly. Class, we have a new student joining us today. This is Lily Chen, and she brings some very unique real-world experience to our discussions. A girl about Lily's age, with blonde hair and green eyes, raised her hand. Are you the one who caught those criminals? She asked in perfect Mandarin. Lily blushed. You speak Chinese? I speak 6 languages, the girl replied, switching to English. I'm Emma Patterson. My dad works for the State Department, so I've lived all over the world. For the first time in months, Lily felt like she might actually fit in somewhere. As the class began discussing the complexities of international business ethics, she found herself contributing insights that her classmates genuinely appreciated. The thing about cross-cultural communication, she said during a discussion, is that you have to understand not just what people are saying, but what they're not saying. Every culture has different ways of showing respect, expressing disagreement, or hiding their true intentions. After class, Emma and 2 other students surrounded Lily with questions. You actually used your abilities to stop criminals? Asked Dev, a boy from India who spoke 7 languages. It wasn't really planned, Lily admitted. I just noticed things that didn't add up. That's what makes you special, said Sophia, a girl from Brazil who specialized in cultural anthropology. Most people learn languages to communicate. You learned to truly understand. As the weeks passed, Lily found herself thriving in ways she never had before. The Academy's curriculum was challenging but engaging, and for the first time in her life, she was surrounded by peers who understood what it meant to be different. But more importantly, she was learning to see her gift not as a burden, but as a responsibility. Her abilities could serve the greater good, but only if she continued to develop them thoughtfully and ethically. One afternoon, Jonathan Hartwell visited her at the academy. Hello, Lily. I hope I'm not interrupting. Mr. Hartwell, what are you doing here? I wanted to see how you were adjusting and to tell you that the real Zhang Wei wants to meet you when he visits New York next month. He believes that young people like you represent the future of international cooperation. As Hartwell left, Lily realized that her journey was far from over. The little girl who had started studying Chinese to pass time while her mother cleaned offices had become something she never could have imagined. A bridge between worlds, a voice for understanding in a complex global community. That evening, as she and her mother rode the subway home, Lily reflected on how much had changed since that pivotal night. She would continue to develop her gifts, not for fame or recognition, but to help people understand each other across the barriers of language and culture. The 9-year-old translator had learned that building bridges of understanding could change the world. One conversation at a time. 2 years had passed since Lily's first day at the Manhattan Academy, and at 11 years old, she had become something of a legend among her peers. Her linguistic abilities now encompassed 8 languages, But more importantly, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to read people's true intentions across cultural barriers. The real Zhang Wei stood in Dr. Foster's office, his presence commanding yet warm. Unlike the imposter Liu Chen, this man carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had built an empire through integrity rather than deception. "Miss Chen," he said in perfect English, "I've heard remarkable things about your development over the past 2 years." Lily bowed respectfully. "Mr. Zhang, it's an honor to finally meet the real you." "The honor is mine. I understand you've been working with several international companies as a cultural consultant. Quite impressive for someone your age." Through Hartwell's internship program, Lily had indeed begun working with various businesses, helping them navigate cultural misunderstandings before they became costly mistakes. Her reputation had grown quietly but steadily in certain circles. "I enjoy helping people understand each other," Lily replied. "But I know I still have so much to learn." Zhang Wei smiled. "That's exactly what I hoped you would say. I have a proposition that could accelerate your learning exponentially." He outlined his vision, a revolutionary cultural exchange program where gifted young Americans would spend time in China, learning not just language, but the deep cultural philosophies that shaped Asian business practices. In return, Chinese students would come to America to understand Western approaches to innovation and entrepreneurship. "You would be our first American participant," Zhang Wei explained. 6 months in Beijing, working directly with my company while continuing your education through our partnership with Beijing International Academy." Lily's heart raced with excitement and terror. 6 months away from my mother. "Your mother would be welcome to join you, of course. We would arrange everything: housing, education, cultural immersion experiences." That evening, Margaret and Lily sat in their apartment, discussing the opportunity that could change their lives forever. The simple woman who had once cleaned office buildings was now being offered a chance to live in one of the world's most dynamic cities. "What do you think, Mama?" Lily asked. Curled up beside her mother on their comfortable couch. "I think this is the kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime," Margaret replied. "But I also think you're still just 11 years old, and I want to make sure you're ready for something this big. I've been preparing for this my whole life, haven't I, even when I didn't know it?" Margaret smiled, remembering the little girl who had taught herself Chinese while waiting in office hallways. "Yes, I suppose you have." "There's something else, Mama. Mr. Zhang mentioned that his company is working on projects that could help bring clean water to rural communities in developing countries. Imagine if I could help with that kind of work." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Emma Patterson, now 13 and fluent in 9 languages, burst into Lily's dorm room with barely contained excitement. "Lily, you'll never believe what just happened. My father got a call from the State Department. They want to create a new youth cultural ambassador program, and they specifically asked about you." "What kind of program?" "The kind where exceptional young people represent America in international settings. Think of it as training for future diplomats, but starting much younger." Lily felt the weight of multiple paths opening before her. Zhang Wei's offer in China, the State Department's interest, her ongoing work with international businesses. Each opportunity represented a different future. "Emma, what would you do?" "I'd probably be terrified and excited at the same time. But Lily, you have something special. You don't just learn languages, you understand souls. That's incredibly rare." As they talked, Lily realized that her gift had evolved far beyond what anyone had anticipated. She wasn't just a translator anymore. She was becoming something much more significant, a cultural bridge builder with the potential to impact international relations at the highest levels. But with great opportunity came great responsibility, And at 11 years old, Lily was beginning to understand that her choices would affect not just her own future, but potentially the futures of countless others who needed people like her to help them communicate across the divides of language and culture. The little girl who had saved a business deal was growing into someone who might one day help save much more than that. The State Department building in Washington, D.C. was unlike anything Lily had ever experienced. At 11, she felt incredibly small, walking through hallways where decisions affecting millions of people were made daily. Margaret held her hand tightly as they were escorted to a conference room on the 7th floor. "Miss Chen," said Ambassador Patricia Reeves, a distinguished woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Thank you for making the trip to see us." "Thank you for inviting me, Ambassador Reeves. Please call me Patricia. We're going to be working together closely if you accept our proposal." Over the next hour, Patricia outlined the Youth Cultural Ambassador Program, an unprecedented initiative designed to train exceptional young people in the art of international diplomacy. Lily would be the program's first participant. "You would spend summers working with our diplomatic corps, learning firsthand how cultural misunderstandings can escalate into international incidents," Patricia explained. "During the school year, you'd continue your education while serving as a consultant on youth perspectives in foreign policy." "Why me?" Lily asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because you've already proven that age doesn't determine wisdom. Your work exposing Liu Chen's criminal network saved not just Hartwell Industries, but prevented a significant security breach that could have affected dozens of American companies." Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand. What kind of work would she actually be doing? Cultural analysis, translation services for sensitive communications, and most importantly, providing insights into how different generations view international cooperation. Young people see the world differently than adults, and sometimes that perspective is exactly what we need. That afternoon, they toured the State Department's Operations Center, where Lily met diplomats working on conflicts around the world. She watched as cultural misunderstandings were resolved through careful communication, and saw firsthand how her linguistic gifts could serve purposes far greater than business deals. "Miss Chen," said Dr. Michael Harrison, "the program's director, I want you to observe something." He led her to a room where a video conference was taking place between American and South Korean officials. The discussion was growing heated over trade negotiations, with both sides becoming increasingly frustrated. "What do you see?" Dr. Harrison asked quietly. Lily watched for several minutes, her trained eye picking up subtle cues. The Korean delegate keeps using formal honorifics, but the American negotiator is responding too casually. In Korean culture, that's seen as disrespectful. The Korean official thinks the American doesn't take him seriously. Exactly. And the American negotiator thinks the Korean is being unnecessarily rigid and formal. Neither side understands the other's communication style. "Could I help?" Dr. Harrison smiled. "That's exactly what we're hoping." Within minutes, Lily was seated at the conference table, serving as a cultural interpreter. She didn't just translate words. She explained the meaning behind them, the cultural context that gave them weight. "Sir," she said to the American negotiator, "when Mr. Kim uses those formal phrases, he's showing respect for your position and the importance of these negotiations. If you respond with similar formality, he'll know you understand the significance of this discussion." The transformation was immediate, as both sides began to understand the cultural frameworks they were operating within. The tension dissolved and productive dialogue resumed. "Remarkable," whispered Ambassador Reeves, who had been observing from the back of the room. After the session, Mr. Kim approached Lily with deep respect. "Young lady, you have a gift that could prevent many conflicts before they begin." That evening, as they flew back to New York, Margaret watched her daughter stare out the airplane window, lost in thought. What are you thinking about, sweetheart? I'm thinking about how many problems in the world start with people not understanding each other, and how maybe, if I work really hard, I could help solve some of those problems. That's a big responsibility for someone your age. I know, but I think this is what I'm supposed to do with my gift, not just help businesses make money, but help people find peace. 3 weeks later, Lily made her decision. She would participate in both programs, spending her summers with the State Department and her junior year abroad with Jiang Wei's cultural exchange program. It was an ambitious plan that would challenge her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But as she stood in Dr. Foster's office, accepting the formal invitations that would shape her future, Lily felt a sense of purpose that went far beyond her years. The 9-year-old translator was becoming an 11-year-old diplomat, and her journey toward changing the world was just beginning. "Are you ready for this, Miss Chen?" Dr. Foster asked. "I think so. But more importantly, I think the world needs people who can build bridges instead of walls." As Lily signed the documents that would launch her into the highest levels of international relations, she had no idea that her greatest test was still to come, a crisis that would require every skill she had developed and some she didn't even know she possessed. Beijing International Academy was a world away from the familiar streets of New York. At 12 years old, Lily found herself immersed in a culture she had studied for 7 years, but was experiencing firsthand for the first time. The autumn air carried scents of jasmine and street food, while the ancient architecture stood in stunning contrast to modern skyscrapers that seemed to touch the clouds. "Lily, how are you adjusting?" asked Dr. Wei Lin, her academic advisor and a linguistics professor who had become something of a mentor. "It's overwhelming but wonderful," Lily replied in fluent Mandarin. "Every day I discover something new about the culture I thought I understood. That's the mark of true wisdom, knowing how much you still don't know." Margaret had indeed come with her. Finding work as an administrative coordinator at the American Embassy, the woman who had once cleaned office buildings now helped manage cultural exchange programs between two of the world's most powerful nations. Lily's days were split between intensive academic studies and hands-on experience with Jiang Wei's company. She was learning that international business was far more complex than she had realized, involving not just language and culture, but politics, economics, and deeply rooted historical relationships between nations. "Miss Chen," Jiang Wei said during one of their weekly meetings, "I have a challenge for you." "What kind of challenge?" My company is negotiating a joint venture with a German manufacturing firm. The project involves building clean energy infrastructure in rural African communities. We need someone who can navigate not just Chinese and German business cultures, but also understand the needs of the African communities we're trying to serve. Lily's eyes widened. That's 3 completely different cultural frameworks. Exactly. And if we get it wrong, we could end up imposing solutions that don't actually help the people we're trying to serve. Over the next month, Lily threw herself into studying German language and culture, while also researching the specific regions in Kenya where the infrastructure would be built. She video called with village leaders, learning about their actual needs rather than making assumptions. The German executives think efficiency is the most important factor, she explained to Jiang Wei during a preparation meeting. But the Kenyan community leaders are more concerned with long-term sustainability and local job creation, and your team is focused on building relationships and showing respect for traditional ways of life. How do we reconcile these different priorities? By finding the common ground. Everyone wants the project to succeed and help people. We just need to show each group how their values align with the others. The negotiation took place via video conference, with Lily serving as more than just a translator. She was a cultural mediator, helping each party understand not just what the others were saying, but why they were saying it. Mr. Müller, she said to the German executive, when Mr. Zhang talks about building harmony with the community, he's describing the same quality control standards you value, making sure the infrastructure integrates perfectly with existing systems. To the Kenyan representatives, she explained, when Mr. Müller discusses efficiency protocols, he's talking about the same sustainable practices you've requested, systems that will continue working for generations without requiring expensive maintenance. The breakthrough came when Lily suggested a modification to the proposal that addressed everyone's core concerns, a phased implementation that would train local workers in maintenance and operation, creating both the immediate efficiency the Germans wanted and the long-term sustainability the Africans needed, while honoring the Chinese emphasis on building lasting relationships. This is remarkable, Mr. Müller said through the video link. I've never seen such young person grasp complex international dynamics so intuitively. But as the negotiations concluded successfully, Lily received news that would test everything she had learned. A crisis was developing between the American and Chinese governments over trade policies, and both sides were asking for her insights as someone who understood both cultures intimately. Lily, Ambassador Reeves said during an urgent video call from Washington, we need you to help us understand something. Chinese officials are using language in their diplomatic communications that our translators are interpreting as threats, but something feels off about the context. Meanwhile, Dr. Wei Lin approached her with a similar concern. The American responses to our government's communications seem unnecessarily aggressive. But knowing what I know about American directness, I suspect there's a misunderstanding happening. Lily realized she was being asked to serve as an intermediary in a potential international crisis. At 12 years old, she was being called upon to prevent a misunderstanding that could affect millions of people. Dr. Wei, she said carefully, could you show me the exact Chinese phrases that are being misinterpreted? As she reviewed the communications from both sides, Lily's heart sank. She could see exactly what was happening, a cascade of cultural misunderstandings that was escalating with each exchange. I think I can help, she said quietly. But I'm going to need both governments to trust me with very sensitive information. The 12-year-old girl, who had started by saving a business deal, was about to attempt something far more ambitious, preventing an international incident between two superpowers. The secure conference room at the American Embassy in Beijing felt charged with tension. On one screen, Ambassador Reeves and her team appeared from Washington. On another, high-ranking Chinese Foreign Ministry officials connected from their headquarters across the city. And in the middle sat 12-year-old Lily Chen, carrying the weight of preventing what could escalate into a serious diplomatic crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Reeves began, Miss Chen has identified what she believes to be a series of translation and cultural interpretation errors that are causing this escalation. Lily took a deep breath. Her young voice steady despite the magnitude of the situation. The problem started with the phrase strategic patience in the American communications. When translated into Chinese, it became strategic waiting, which implies passive aggression rather than thoughtful consideration. Foreign Minister Wang nodded slowly. Continue, Miss Chen. On the Chinese side, the phrase mutual respect for core interests was translated as mutual demands for fundamental compliance, which sounds like an ultimatum in English rather than a request for understanding. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the State Department's chief China analyst, leaned forward. Are you saying both sides have been responding to threats that were never actually made? Exactly. Each side's response then seemed to confirm the other side's interpretation that they were being threatened, creating a cycle of escalating misunderstandings. Minister Wang spoke in rapid Mandarin to his colleagues, then addressed the room. Miss Chen, if this is accurate, how do you suggest we resolve it? Lily had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing for this moment. I propose we reset the entire conversation. Both sides need to acknowledge that cultural and linguistic differences created false impressions, and we need to establish new communication protocols. What kind of protocols? Ambassador Reeves asked. Every sensitive communication should include cultural context explanations. When American officials use direct language, include a note explaining that directness in American culture shows respect and efficiency, not aggression. When Chinese officials use formal diplomatic language, explain that the formality shows respect for the importance of the relationship. Over the next 4 hours, Lily helped both sides reinterpret weeks of communications. What had seemed like escalating threats were revealed to be misunderstood attempts at diplomacy. The relief in the room was palpable as tensions dissolved. Miss Chen, Minister Wang said, you have performed a service for both our nations that will likely never be publicly acknowledged, but its importance cannot be overstated. I just wanted to help people understand each other, Lily replied. But as the crisis de-escalated, Lily received an unexpected call from Zhang Wei. His voice was urgent, concerned. Lily, I need to tell you something about your father. My father? He left us years ago. That's what you were told. But David Chen has been working for a private intelligence firm that monitors international business communications. He's been tracking your activities since the Liu Chen incident. Lily's world tilted. What do you mean? Your linguistic abilities and access to sensitive information have made you a person of interest to several organizations, some legitimate, some not. Your father has been trying to protect you by keeping track of who's paying attention to you. Where is he? He's here in Beijing. He's been working with Chinese and American security services to identify people who might try to exploit your abilities for illegal purposes. That evening, in a small cafe near the embassy, Lily met her father for the first time in 6 years. David Chen was thinner than she remembered, his hair showing premature grey, his eyes carrying the weariness of someone who had seen too much. Lily, he said quietly, I know you must hate me for leaving. I thought you left because you didn't want us anymore. I left because I knew your abilities would eventually make you a target. I couldn't protect you as a struggling family man. But I could protect you as someone working within the intelligence community. So you've been watching me this whole time. Every major opportunity that's come your way, every dangerous situation you've encountered, I've been working behind the scenes to ensure your safety. Lily felt a complex mix of emotions, anger at being deceived, relief that her father hadn't simply abandoned them, and fear about what this meant for her future. Dad, what happens now? Now you get to choose your own path, knowing that you have people protecting you from the shadows. Your mother will need to know the truth, and you'll need to decide whether the work you're doing is worth the risks that come with it. As father and daughter talked late into the night, Lily realized that her gift had made her part of a much larger and more dangerous world than she had ever imagined. The question now was whether she was brave enough to continue using her abilities to build bridges between nations, knowing that some people would try to use those same abilities for destructive purposes. The 12-year-old diplomat was about to face her greatest test yet. The revelation about her father's true role had shaken Lily to her core. But it also clarified something important. Her linguistic abilities weren't just gifts, they were responsibilities that came with real consequences. As she prepared for her final month in Beijing, an urgent situation arose that would test everything she had learned. Lily, Dr. Wei Lin said, rushing into her study room at the academy. There's been an incident at the German-Chinese Kenyan project site. The infrastructure installation has stopped, and all three parties are blaming each other. What kind of incident? The solar panel installation damaged a site that the local community considered sacred. The German team says the Kenyan representatives approved the location. The Kenyan officials say the Chinese survey team marked the wrong coordinates. The Chinese engineers say the German equipment specifications were incorrect. Lily's heart sank. This was exactly the kind of cultural catastrophe she had hoped to prevent. How bad is it? Bad enough that all three governments are involved. The project could be cancelled, which means thousands of people will continue without reliable electricity, and the relationships between the companies could be permanently damaged. Within hours, Lily found herself on a video call with angry representatives from 3 continents. The German executives were demanding accountability and compensation. The Chinese engineers were insisting they had followed all protocols correctly. The Kenyan community leaders were devastated that their sacred site had been disturbed and wanted all foreign companies to leave immediately. "Everyone, please," Lily said. Her young voice cutting through the chaos of 3 languages being spoken simultaneously. "Before we assign blame, can we focus on solutions?" "Miss Chen," said Mr. Muller, the German executive, "this is a disaster that could cost millions of dollars and destroy years of relationship building. And it could have been prevented if proper cultural surveys had been conducted," added village elder Joseph Kiprotich from Kenya, his voice heavy with disappointment. Zhang Wei looked exhausted. The coordinates we were given were supposed to be thoroughly vetted. Lily realized that finger-pointing would only make things worse. What if we approach this differently? Instead of figuring out who made the mistake, what if we focus on how to honor the sacred site while still bringing electricity to the community? "The site is already damaged," Elder Kiprotich said sadly, "but it could be restored and honored in a way that actually strengthens the project," Lily suggested. "What if the solar installation became part of a larger cultural preservation effort?" Over the next several hours, Lily helped facilitate a conversation that transformed a crisis into an opportunity. The German company agreed to fund a cultural preservation center at the sacred site. The Chinese team redesigned the solar array to create a beautiful integration of technology and traditional architecture. The Kenyan community became active partners in both the technical installation and the cultural preservation efforts. "This is remarkable," Mr. Muller admitted. "We've turned a potential catastrophe into a model for culturally sensitive development." But as the crisis resolved, Lily received disturbing news from her father. "Lily, we've intercepted communications suggesting that some people are planning to kidnap you." "Kidnap me? Why?" "Your abilities have made you incredibly valuable to certain criminal organizations. They've seen how you can mediate international disputes and want to use you for illegal purposes." "What do we do?" "You need to come home immediately. The FBI and Chinese security services are coordinating your protection. But Beijing isn't safe for you right now." That night, as Lily packed her belongings, she reflected on how much had changed since that first night in the boardroom. The 9-year-old girl who had wanted to help with a business deal had become a 12-year-old cultural diplomat whose abilities were considered so valuable that criminals would risk international incidents to possess them. Margaret arrived at the academy to help with the departure preparations, her face tight with worry. "Lily, I'm so sorry I dragged you into this world." "Mama, you didn't drag me anywhere. This is who I am. These abilities, this responsibility, they're part of me whether I use them or not. But you're still just a child." "I'm a child who can prevent wars, Mama. How can I not use that gift?" Duh. As their plane lifted off from Beijing International Airport, Lily watched the city shrink below her. She was leaving behind friends, mentors, and opportunities. But she was also carrying with her the knowledge that her work was more important than she had ever imagined. The question now was whether she could continue to build bridges between cultures while staying safe from those who would exploit her gifts for destructive purposes. As the plane crossed into international airspace, Lily made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She would not hide from her abilities or the dangers they brought. Instead, she would find a way to use them more effectively and safely than ever before. The 12-year-old was about to become something the world had never seen before, a professional cultural diplomat who could operate at the highest levels of international relations while still being young enough to see solutions that adults missed. 5 years later, 17-year-old Lily Chen stood before the United Nations General Assembly, the youngest person ever to address the full body of world leaders. Her voice, now mature and confident, carried the weight of nearly a decade of international experience. "Distinguished delegates," she began, speaking in English, but with the cultural sensitivity that had become her trademark. "I stand before you today, not as a curiosity or a prodigy, but as someone who has learned that the greatest conflicts often arise from the smallest misunderstandings." In the audience, Margaret wiped away tears of pride. Beside her sat David, who had finally returned to his family once Lily's security situation had been resolved. Ambassador Reeves nodded approvingly from the American delegation, while Jiang Wei watched from the Chinese section with the satisfaction of a mentor whose protégé had exceeded all expectations. "Over the past 8 years," Lily continued, "I have had the privilege of working with leaders from dozens of nations. I have seen how quickly distrust can escalate into conflict and how efficiently understanding can transform enemies into partners." She spoke about the German-Chinese-Kenyan project, which had become a model for culturally sensitive international development. She described her work with the State Department, where she had helped prevent 17 separate diplomatic crises through cultural interpretation. She outlined her vision for a new kind of international relations based on deep cultural understanding rather than superficial political agreements. But today, I want to talk about something more important than my work. I want to talk about the next generation of global citizens, young people who are growing up with the assumption that understanding across cultures is not just possible, but essential. Lily announced the launch of the International Youth Cultural Ambassador Network, a program that would train young people from every continent in the skills of cultural mediation and international cooperation. The program would be funded by a coalition of governments and private organizations, with Jiang Wei's company and Hartwell Industries as founding partners. "We cannot wait for the next generation to grow up before we start building bridges," she said. "The challenges we face, climate change, economic inequality, technological disruption, require immediate cooperation across cultural and national boundaries." As she concluded her speech, the assembly erupted in unprecedented applause. But for Lily, the real victory came in the days that followed, as applications poured in from young people around the world who wanted to become cultural ambassadors. 3 months later, Lily sat in her office at Columbia University, where she was completing her doctoral studies in international cultural relations while simultaneously running the ambassador program. At 17, she was already being discussed as a potential future Secretary of State or even Secretary General of the United Nations. "Miss Chen," said her assistant Emma Patterson, now 21 and serving as the program's deputy director, "we just received our 1,000th application from young people wanting to join the Cultural Ambassador Network." "That's wonderful, but remember, this isn't about the numbers. It's about finding young people who understand that building bridges is harder than building walls, but infinitely more important." That evening, as Lily walked through the familiar streets of Queens to visit her mother, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a 9-year-old girl trying to help with a business translation. The scared child who had once hidden her abilities was now training others to use their gifts for the betterment of humanity. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Foster at the Manhattan Academy. "Lily, we have a new student who reminds me of you at that age. She speaks 6 languages and just helped resolve a conflict between her Pakistani and Indian classmates. Would you like to meet her?" Lily smiled, thinking about the cycle of mentorship and growth that had defined her life. Every bridge she had built had made it easier for others to build bridges of their own. "Tell her I'll be there tomorrow," she typed back, "and remind her that being different isn't a burden, it's a superpower." As she knocked on her mother's door, Lily knew that her story was far from over. The 9-year-old translator had become a 17-year-old diplomat, but more importantly, she had become living proof that understanding across cultures wasn't just an idealistic dream, it was a practical necessity for human survival. The little girl who had saved a business deal had grown up to help save something much more precious, the possibility that people from different worlds could work together to build a better future for everyone. And in conference rooms and classrooms around the world, a new generation of cultural ambassadors was just beginning to discover their own power to change the world, one conversation at a time.